a dark day in the history of the United States as the hallowed halls of our republic are violently breached. We'll take a look at what began as a protest and what turned into a mob. Plus,
to those who wreaked havoc in our capital today, you did not win.
Vice President Mike Pence and members of the Senate speak out against the acts of violence. Also,
had that group of people been black or brown, especially black, it would not have happened this way. We wouldn't have made it to the steps to be able to then come in the doors.
Did race play a part in the response by authorities at the Capitol? And how did this mess get started? All this and more on this special report, The Capitol Under Siege. Good evening, America. I'm Eddie McCoven. Today may not be a day which will live in infamy, but it is a day that some are calling an attack on our nation's capital. I'm talking about, of course, the mob of so-called protesters who forcibly entered the Capitol building while Congress was in session to certify the Electoral College votes and naming Joe Biden as the next president of the United States and naming Kamala Harris as the next vice president of the United States. The joint session of Congress began shortly after 1 p.m. with Mike Pence presiding in his official role as president of the Senate. The certification process was to be carried out state by state in alphabetical order. The first objection was raised for the state of Arizona. After this, the joint session was suspended and the chamber was emptied as each body of Congress went to debate separately on the matter. And that's when the chaos began.
They're moving past the police, tearing down the barriers. Police are moving. This is actually happening, people. They're going in. This is actually happening.
Protesters waving Trump 2020 flags broke through the police barriers and went into the Capitol building. Authorities went into action, with the Secret Service ushering out the vice president and members of the presidential line of succession, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate President Pro Tem Chuck Grassley. Other members of Congress were taken to undisclosed locations. After hours of civil unrest, the Capitol Police and D.C. Metro Police, with assistance from the National Guard and law enforcement from nearby states, cleared the Capitol grounds. A 6 p.m. curfew was enacted by the mayor of D.C. Now, shortly after 8 p.m. Eastern, the Senate reconvened, with Vice President Mike Pence opening with this statement.
Today was a dark day in the history of the United States Capitol. But thanks to the swift efforts of U.S. Capitol Police, federal, state, and local law enforcement, the violence was quelled. The Capitol is secured, and the people's work continues. We condemn the violence that took place here in the strongest possible terms. We grieve the loss of life in these hallowed halls, as well as the injuries suffered by those who defended our Capitol today. And we will always be grateful to the men and women who stayed at their posts to defend this historic place. To those who wreaked havoc in our Capitol today, you did not win. Violence never wins. Freedom wins. And this is still the people's house. And as we reconvene in this chamber, the world will again witness the resilience and strength of our democracy. For even in the wake of unprecedented violence and vandalism at this Capitol, the elected representatives of the people of the United States have assembled again on the very same day to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So may God bless the lost, the injured, and the heroes forged on this day. May God bless all who serve here and those who protect this place. And may God bless the United States of America. Let's get back to work.
And as you just saw and heard, the Vice President received a round of applause and a standing ovation. Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, the current majority leader of the Senate, delivered remarks after Vice President Mike Pence.
I want to say to the American people, the United States Senate will not be intimidated. We will not be kept out of this chamber by thugs, mobs, or threats. We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation. We are back at our posts. We will discharge our duty under the Constitution and for our nation. And we're going to do it tonight. This afternoon, Congress began the process of honoring the will of the American people and counting the Electoral College votes. We've fulfilled this solemn duty every 4 years for more than 2 centuries. Whether our nation's been at war or at peace, under all manner of threats, even during an ongoing armed rebellion and the Civil War, the clockwork of our democracy has carried on. The United States and the United States Congress have faced down much greater threats than the unhinged crowd we saw today. We've never been deterred before and will be not deterred today. They tried to disrupt our democracy. They failed. They failed. They failed to attempt to obstruct the Congress. This failed insurrection only underscores how crucial the task before us is for our republic. Our nation was founded precisely so that the free choice of the American people is what shapes our self-government and determines the destiny of our nation. Not fear, not force, but the peaceful expression of the popular will. Now, we assembled this afternoon to count our citizens' votes and to formalize their choice of the next president. Now we're going to finish exactly what we started. We'll complete the process the right way, by the book. We'll follow our precedents, our laws, and our Constitution to the letter. And we will certify the winner of the 2020 presidential election. Criminal behavior will never dominate the United States Congress. This institution is resilient. Our democratic republic is strong. The American people deserve nothing less.
Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the current minority leader of the Senate, said President Trump was to blame for today's events at the Capitol, calling it an insurrection.
Mr. President, it is very, very difficult to put into words what has transpired today. I have never lived through or even imagined an experience like the one we have just witnessed in this Capitol. President Franklin Roosevelt set aside December 7, 1941, as a day that will live in infamy. Unfortunately, we can now add January 6, 2021, to that very short list of dates in American history that will live forever in infamy. This temple to democracy was desecrated, its windows smashed, our offices vandalized. The world saw Americans' elected officials hurriedly ushered out because they were in harm's way. The House and Senate floors were places of shelter until the evacuation was ordered, leaving rioters to stalk these hallowed halls. Lawmakers and our staffs, average citizens who love their country, serve it every day, feared for their lives. I understand that one woman was shot and tragically lost her life. We mourn her and feel for her friends and family. These images were projected to the world. Foreign embassies cabled home their home capitals to report the harrowing scenes at the very heart of our democracy. This will be a stain on our country, not so easily washed away. The final, terrible, indelible legacy of the 45th President of the United States, undoubtedly our worst. I want to be very clear. Those who perform these reprehensible acts cannot be called protesters. No, these were rioters and insurrectionists, goons and thugs, domestic terrorists. They do not represent America. They were a few thousand violent extremists who tried to take over the Capitol building and attack our democracy. They must and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, hopefully by this administration, if not, certainly by the next.
The Senate, along with the House, is still working through the certification of the Electoral College votes. Calls for concern today among the protests, asking where were the police? Others saying the police were too slow to respond because the crowd was largely Caucasian. Congresswoman Cori Bush of Missouri says she thinks the police response would have been different if the crowd had been made up of largely people of color.
Had that group of people been Black or brown, especially Black, it would not have happened this way. We wouldn't have made it to the steps to be able to then come in the doors. There would not have been any tear gas, being deployed inside the Capitol. There would not have been, any of us with our feet up on, a member's desk. That would not have happened. We wouldn't have made it that far. We would have been shot had we tried to do all of that. Let's just be real. We would have been shot. The tear gas would have been deployed outside, noise munitions, rubber bullets. I am absolutely stunned that the reason that it was different, the reason why we saw a different type of reaction to what happened today is simply because of the color of the people's skin who were there.
Now, President-elect Joe Biden addressed the nation earlier today after the violence at the Capitol broke out, calling on President Trump to speak out against the acts of those protesters, adding, "The world is watching."
I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege, to storm the Capitol, to smash windows, to occupy offices, the floor of the United States Senate, rummaging through desks, on the Capitol, on the House of Representatives, threatening the safety of duly elected officials. It's not protest, it's insurrection. The world's watching. Like so many other Americans, I am genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation, so long the beacon of light and hope for democracy, has come to such a dark moment.
Now, President Trump did not address the nation from the Oval Office today, but in a video posted to Twitter, the president said he felt the protesters' pain, but encouraged them to, quote, go home in peace.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Now, in the video you just saw, which has been removed from Twitter now, the president continued his unsubstantiated claims of voter fraud. Now, Twitter did lock the president's account for 12 hours due to this tweet and a tweet about the vice president and a third tweet saying those messages violated Twitter policies. The social media platform said it would also continue to block the president's account until the tweets are removed. Facebook also joined Twitter in locking the president's accounts. So, how did this mess all get started? Before the joint session of Congress was set to begin today, President Trump and a number of his supporters held a rally on the National Mall. Some are pointing to the president's words at this event, saying he incited the violence. Take a listen.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. Today I will lay out just some of the evidence proving that we won this election, and we won it by a landslide. This was not a close election. You know, I say sometimes jokingly, but there's no joke about it. I've been in 2 elections. I won them both, and the second one I won much bigger than the first, okay?
So what caused the protesters to leave the National Mall and invade the Capitol? Was it the divisive rhetoric of the president and other speakers at the event? Some, of course, say yes. Was it the results of the Georgia Senate runoff election, which flipped control of the Senate to the Democrats? Perhaps. But perhaps another question. Was this planned all along? A source on the ground in D.C. tells me it was members of Antifa embedded in the crowd who led the surge, and others simply got caught up in the moment. Well, we will find out in the days and weeks to come as arrests are made and investigations are conducted. Hopefully, we'll get to the bottom of this, and hopefully we will find out why the Capitol Police and the D.C. Metro Police were seemingly unprepared for this event. Some final thoughts now. Why did this happen? There's a lot of things that we can point to, that we can say, and we can speculate. But until we really know, until an investigation is done, until some hearings are convened on Capitol Hill, we really won't know why this happened today and who was behind it. Was the election really stolen? The rallies that the president has been speaking at recently have been called Stop the Steal, Save America. America does need saving, but I'm not sure President Trump or even President Obama before him were the messiahs that this country needed. Was the election really stolen? That's a very good question. Was there voter fraud? Was it widespread? Was it a vast conspiracy? I don't think so. But then again, I don't think we've had an honest election since Kennedy was elected. But again, I don't think there was widespread voter fraud or election fraud or errors in the count. They could have happened here or there. If they're discovered and they are in fact found out, would they change the results of the election? Probably not. Is President Trump really to blame? President Trump has been a very interesting president, to say the least. One thing he has not been is a uniter, a coalition builder. One can argue, yes, the Democrats did a lot of war and investigation, as people would call it, instead of peace and legislation. But the president kept being on the defensive this entire time. The president didn't build a coalition. The president didn't see the 2018 election as what it was, which is the House is going to go to the Democrats for a reason, because the people of this country want something done. And they didn't feel that an all-Republican Congress did much or did enough, really, in terms of health care costs, tax relief. So instead of building coalitions and working together with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, the establishment Republicans, as well as the establishment Democrats, and even some of the radical Democrats or radical Republicans out there, because there's radicals on both sides. Instead of building bridges and coalitions, he went to Twitter and attacked. So is President Trump to blame? Well, some of it rests on his shoulders. But then again, what about the fact that some of these people protesting today on a Wednesday afternoon when they should be at work are unemployed? Their state governments have locked everything down because of the coronavirus outbreak. People are out of work. People can't go to work. They're furloughed. They're locked down at home. They've been forced to stay at home for 10 months. All while watching Black Lives Matter and other protests happening in the summer of 2020 and seeing the violence that occurred and seeing mayors and governors not really speaking out against the violence, although quite a few did. Quite a few members of Congress condemned the violence as well. But you have to think for a second. Those people saw that. And some of them probably, as they were storming that Capitol today, thought, if the Black Lives Matter protesters can do this, so can I. Of course, if they were at work, they wouldn't be protesting at the Capitol today. They would just be living their lives as normal. But that's another story. I will say this. Peaceful protest is one of the hallmarks of our republic. What happened in our nation's capital is not a reflection of the values that we hold dear. This is not law and order. This is tyranny. Thank you for joining me. I'm Eddie McCoven. Stay safe out there, America.